Not in my usual spot because I think my desktop is finally giving up the ghost. Anyway, I need a new one. I'll do what I wrote, but I have an addendum. Anyway, so why? I read a long and thoughtful, sympathetic essay on the need to have empathy for boys attracted to the manosphere. I read and I thought, I can't. I can sympathize, knowing the difference, at least the kind of messy difference is defined variously, which may be telling in itself. The difference between emp and simp, empathy and sympathy. I empathize if I share the feelings with them. And I didn't, then nor now. I can feel sorry for the trap they are in if it's described to me, then I can see it clearly, and that nothing prepared them or gave them the resources to resist Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson or any of the rest when they come to that age. Did they feel their boy selves were oppressed by feminism? Or do the men writing and aged men writing and theorizing about them feel inhibited by feminism? Do these men fancy being kings? Do they think that's what they're aiming at? Do they need the adoration? It looks that way, like kings. They cannot be bounded in a nutshell and count themselves rulers of infinite space. They need the trappings and the courtiers and I guess the harem. I remember the age or those ages very well, and I did not feel oppressed by the confusion of them. I felt rather invigorated with it. I can say I was immensely lucky. I was in that I was allowed enough to embrace the strangeness of boyhood. So after 10, let's say, the thrill of it. There was the expected horror at home from the family that I was so thrilled, but not really disapproval. This might be the strange gift of parents who acknowledged their own strangeness. I know they both came of extremely conventional families themselves. It was that generation, and so they maybe did the early work of breaking free. They did not try to be role models, thank God. In a way, they were arrogant or selfish enough to just be themselves. I think that was hard for them, but made it easier for me. I suppose that the bottom line is this: growing up is hard and confusing. Life is hard and confusing. I remember at 11 or 12 being very happy, a very happy kid, and hearing the Archies doing Bang Shangalang. You remember that? And the Monkeys. I saw her face. I'm a believer. That kind of music, and that was extant then. And I wanted a guitar, and to be a pop star. Then 2 years later, when parents split and I encountered my first girlfriend, and I was, 14 and entering that era, one does, and spiraling in confusion, and I heard Bob Dylan. And the door opened and I went through it. Lad of Athens, faithful be to thyself and mystery, all the rest is perjury, said Emily Dickinson. Two things land right away. A woman brought truth, and the snarler that was Bob Dylan was true too. And off I went, not to be or seem to be, but to let it all wash over me and turn it into poetry, which is not literary to me. I know this dream, it might be crazy, but it's the only one I got. Another line. So there is that. For some reason, the rather strange and seething landscape was just okay at 15. If I was allowed, and I was, and perhaps in the mayhem of the early 70s, a recluse like me was part of the scene. Like Emily said, it was mystery all around. I tried the soccer team and the swimming team, but settled for being a runner of no competition. There were no victories, I don't think, only large feelings, mystery. So then I conceived of the sacred age of adolescence. School was rough, isn't it? I went every day. It was my context, and there I could see the distances better, and I did well there. with a lucky knack, a certain crude charm and ferociousness, and being an outdoor boy, it was very Fern Hillish. All the while this was going on, I was in the loop. I knew the conclusions other guys were coming to about themselves and perhaps about girls. I went through lots of small, searing kinds of crushes, all requited with why this happened. I don't know, except I liked them, and I didn't call it love. So there was no classification. So what happened to the boy Jamie in the TV show Adolescence? So well done by the boy Owen. It looks to me like he had no garden or wilderness, no sanctioned alone time. He had had no flirtations at 6, never held hands at 9. I do believe the case. I suppose the provocation was what they said it was. She called him an incel, and he was so lost he stabbed her. And see the symptoms, because we know that happened. Is it possible to find that as a writer or actor? I don't know that they did, but since it actually happened in real life, we accepted it and traced the trauma, the writer and the director. So the event, the murder and the fallout is constrained by the world that made him do it. Tons of studies and theories and rituals of education and the society into which he's being educated have been explored for years and years. The Spartans did it one way, the Athenians did it another way, small tribal things circumscribed by war. We don't do that now. It is inapplicable, but I suspect it might be a matter of doing less to boys, not more. Boys and girls, the more manipulations and therapies might do more harm than good. The world that made them do it, the world that began to disapprove of the use and abuse of the powerless, when the hell was that? I was in New Orleans during a Super Bowl 2013, it must have been, and I was suspicious, and I saw suspiciously young girls being herded around by large, much older, wealthy men. Use and abuse of the powerless goes back and back in history, and the manosphere looks to me like a rationale for its continuation. All of its codes of hierarchy, all the pathetic boys tugging forelocks to their manly man du jour, and the men seem to love it. They seem to need it, and Jordan Peterson sits on a stack of bestsellers. It is not his fault that society makes him a truth teller because he wrote bestsellers. Society is a bit silly that way. I believe he believes what he says, but he is onto a good thing. And he seems too weak to stand back and watch himself critically. To this day, I have no idea what it's like to be you, so I take you at your word or words. There's no real commonality, I can assume, and perhaps by steady practice one gets used to not expecting or craving it, commonality. Without a fear of being alone becomes full of treasure and definitive. So, the process of socialization follows this wild boyhood, not the other way round. One finds oneself, if I may, in the wildness of boyhood, the wild wood, the wilderness. Then one day you come back, re-encounter your adult. They are everywhere, but you only choose the necessary ones. Your eyesight is sharp because you do not need them anymore. You are now testing your adults for their worth. Be aware, though, the weak adults will be infuriated by this. They recognize the wild boy who has come home to be the one they never were, the temptation of conforming. In fact, the influences society approved of this adult will be Jordan Peterson. He will whine for you should you need this, and let him know. Flatter him. This weak adult, in self-defense, cuts down the wild wood and paves over the garden. In my opinion, and on the evidence, nothing has done this so thoroughly as religion. The recent, the more thorough, is the control of young psyches.